Welcome, GrayMatter leaders, to our unpublished podcast for GrayMatter career and leadership coaching. I am so thrilled that you've chosen to tune in and invest some of your time today to engage with us in a conversation intended to move you into the leading edge of your life and business as a leader. At GrayMatter, we believe you have the power to activate a part of your brain scientifically known as the gray matter. And in so doing, you can take yourself out of autopilot thinking and behavior. As always, my name is Jeanette. I'm the head of sales and communication here at GMC, and also your host for today's leadership conversation. I am also joined by my favorite chief coach and co host and founder of GMC, BJ Gray herself. And today we're talking about culture in the workplace. So we're talking about how do we build culture? How do we pivot? How do we go from what BJ refers to as a high performance culture to an inclusive culture, which sounds very exciting to me. Can't wait to learn about that. And she's going to define for us some really key concepts like what's required for the new business environment that we're all in, and what is culture anyway. And I'm so excited that I get to pick her brain on this, and hopefully you will get a couple of golden nuggets to integrate into your life, into your career as a leader. And without further ado, I want to bring BJ out. BJ, the spotlight is on you. How are you?
I'm great, Jeanette. Thank you so much. This is one of my favorite topics when I'm working with companies is really helping them transform their culture. And I just am thrilled that we can talk about this probably for the third time, I think, since we've done these podcasts, but I will always come back to culture building because it really is the glue that holds a business together. Yes. And it's true. I want companies to work more from the mindset of a high performance culture, because to me, culture is that prevailing mindset that's going on in the company. And if the prevailing mindset used to be all about performance and efficiency and speed, which is still very important, but now how do we pivot a little bit to make it more inclusive and relatable? So when we got into that high performance type culture, we weren't as relatable. We were more grounded in do your job, do it well, and others do their job well. But now we need to kind of mold those two together and become a culture that still performs, but has a lot more curiosity and empathy and relation building. So you have to make it more inclusive to develop that kind of culture.
I love it. There is a fantastic quote that I first heard from you, and it made me giggle the first time you said it to me because of how crazy and true it was. Do you recall? It's you love saying it so much, like in terms of how powerful culture is to a company.
Is it like culture is not something you are, it's something you do?
I do like that one as well. No, but it's not that one. I know I'm playing the guessing game here with you now. No, it's something to. I'm just going to paraphrase it because I don't quite know it verbatim the way you do. Something that like culture eats culture.
Oh, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I love that one.
I think that was Peter Drucker. I think Peter Drucker is the one who said that.
Ah,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's so good. The first time I heard it from you, I really laughed so much. But then I thought that is so true. And you know, the funny thing is, most people assume that strategy is everything.
Yeah.
You were like the first person who made me aware of the fact that strategy is important, but not as important as culture.
If your culture is not there, the strategy is going to get blown to pieces. Yeah, it's so funny. And I also think people sometimes believe culture is your values, is your mission statement, which is also extremely important in companies to have some principles that are like the North Star. But that means that that's just not the culture, is just saying your values, right? It's culture is something that we all participate in.
I
So
see.
that's how
So,
why I
so
say
what's
culture is
your
not something you are, it's something you do. Yeah.
So what is your definition of culture?
Well, I really believe culture is derived from the Latin word cultus, which means to
Mhm.
care. So it's really the prevailing mindset of your organization. Like it's not like a policy or any training. It's like the outcome that you want your company to be. So
Mhm.
with, a lot of the social justice that went on this past year, it's now companies need to become something. What do they want their company to be? They want to be more caring, right? With,
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter and the Me Too
Mhm.
movement and inclusivity of all types of people. So I think going back to the root of what culture is, which is to care, is what culture is. And then what are the behaviors that we need to embody to care about others and relate to them better?
I love it. Okay, so what I'm hearing is culture is about behavior. So it's almost like an embodiment or an expression, an outward expression of the people, and not like a statement that's hung up like in the boardrooms or
Yeah,
something like that.
less about your values and your mission statement and more about how you're behaving. You're exactly right. Where before our mindset was to behave in a performance, so it's very actionable, right? You could have
Hmm.
metrics around your performance. This is more
Yes,
about how do we measure behavior? I mean, that's going to be something that we have to invent. How do we measure
that's
people's
kind of
behavior?
hard.
It is, it's subjective too. Yeah.
Yes. And so then keywords come in for me when you say care. Well, first of all, I didn't even know that that word is supposed to be attached to organizations, right? But when you say care, you also allude to empathy, which is a big thing, right? Simon Sinek talks about it all the time. You talk about it all the time. Brene Brown talks about it all the time. Is that where is that where empathy kind of comes in and wraps the whole concept of what culture is supposed to be?
Yeah. And I think empathy was the cornerstone for emotional intelligence, right? Which was my leadership 2.0. When I talk about leadership in three phases, we used to have traditional leadership, and then we had a
Yes.
leadership 2.0, which was about emotional intelligence. That probably started in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then now we have this leadership 3.0, which is more
Hmm.
about um, emotional intelligence packed with more self-awareness, packed with brave leadership, and that embodies culture in the sense that empathy requires curiosity about yourself and why you're behaving the way you are and about the way others are behaving. So why do they think the way they think, and being open to it, not just judgmental about it. So yeah, I think empathy and curiosity are kind of my 1-2 punch for um, how to behave in a culture that is inclusive.
Right. Okay. And in all of this, another key thing that you coach on, and we talk about this a lot. We even have a podcast where you really um, dissected this idea of having trust between a leader and her team or his team members. Where does trust come into play in this scenario of culture building?
Well, you think about, I think there's three ingredients to building trust. It's safety. So people have to feel safe. They can speak up with candor. Belonging. They have to feel like they belong to the team, that they're not um, being judged or blamed, and then they have to feel like they matter. So there's got to be a lot of feedback. Like I feel like feedback just can't be on a quarterly basis or on a review cycle. Feedback has to be in the moment. um, Good feedback, constructive feedback, and the ability to build trust. You have to have that ability to have respectful confrontation, right? The only way you're going to really work out problems is if you can respect each other's opinions. And there may be a
Mhm.
confrontation in there, but I find a lot of cultures, a lot of companies are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to be curious about somebody else's opinion. And that's when it goes off the rails. So I think to build trust, you need to have safety. So speaking with candor, respectful confrontation, make sure people
Mhm.
feel like they matter, and make sure they feel like they belong. And if you have those three human basic needs that we all want, whether in any relationship, right? Whether it's a personal relationship or a work
Mhm.
relationship, then you can build trust.
I see. And I think I understand why it's so hard for organizations, especially leaders in big companies, to do this successfully so far, because I feel like that touches on something, because as you were speaking and you were saying that it's important to respect each other's opinions, and also to be brave enough to have a confrontation with someone, yet still reach that point of resolution. I was just feeling it in my body, like, okay, but what about if I don't like confrontation? Like, or I have some kind of trauma, or I grew up in a house where confrontation never ended well. Where does a leader go when they hear you and they so agree with what you have to say, but there's just that it's so hard?
It's hard because it's uncomfortable. That's the main reason why it's
Yes.
hard. It's just uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. And we as humans tend to shy away from uncomfortable feelings. So it's the ability to lean into that uncomfortable emotion and realize it's not going to kill you, and that you're going to that if there's trust between the two of you, it shouldn't go off the rails. It's okay to say something that someone might disagree with or make a mistake in the conversation, and you're still going to have each other's back. So I think that if you're not a confrontational person, you will continue to harbor a lot of stories in your head, and that won't play out well when you're really trying to build trust and get to the bottom of things. I think you have to want to check yourself, make sure where you're coming from, and allow yourself, be candid about it. Hey, I'm uncomfortable having this conversation, but I want to talk to you. Is it okay if we talk? I mean, be super overt and then lean into your conversation.
At the risk of being vulnerable. Just
Exactly.
say, this is hard for me too, but we need to have this conversation. Yeah, that goes for parents as well. I'm just saying. Because it's hard to, it's kind of, I feel like you're coaching not just leaders but parents at the same time. It's like a 2-in-1 gift right here. Okay, so if we want to start, we're at the beginning stages of this, and we've been listening to your material, and what you're saying now makes sense, and we're like, okay, I'm digging this. And of course we have our mental fitness framework that's fantastic for anyone who wants to get started with that. But if I really want to get to the heart um, of trust and developing it for myself, or if there is another secret source, what would that be, and how do I develop it?
The secret to anything in my book is thought management. So the way you think about anything, building trust, building a culture, if you have hesitation in your thoughts about any of it, you will fumble. So it's about being brave, and managing the thoughts around what you have to do to be more brave in your leadership style, or more open and curious, and have the ability to fail forward or make mistakes. Like, I think it all goes back to how you're thinking about it. If you fear speaking up, then you will not speak up. So it's about thought management to me. And building trust is just about respect, and like I said, creating that space for safety, and vulnerability for everybody. And I think when I talk to companies about this, I really talk to the senior leadership team first, and I ask them to develop 5 principles around behavior, and then continue to talk about those principles so that people start to understand it's okay to behave this way. So it's okay to make time for others and not agree with them. Just let them say their thing and not agree with them. It's okay to have a hard conversation, and maybe it doesn't go the way you want it to go, but you're practicing. So I really like senior leadership teams to think about 5 behavior principles that they want their teams to start practicing, and really walk the walk and keep them and top of mind all the time. So this one company has been saying, I'm going to be like, they've been super overt when they go into meetings. I'm going to speak with candor right now. When someone wants to say something that's a little bit uncomfortable and maybe controversial, or I'm being curious right now. They're kind of like almost saying the principle so that they kind of can register, I need to start behaving this way. I'm going to like push the boundaries right now and be really bold. This may be not what our brand is, like, if someone wants to try something new and people are always like, oh no, that's not who we are. But if you have to have that kind of conversation that's forward thinking. So maybe someone needs to almost say, I'm going to be bold and ask us to innovate and bring up something that people might not agree with, right? So you got to like create some principles and then start bringing them up often, in the spirit of trying fast, learning fast, and failing. I put this concept out there. Is this the right thing? So like you really start to like show people it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay that we disagree. It's okay because we're still a team. We're not going to judge. We're not going to, put you outside of the bubble. You're still in the bubble, even if you speak up with candor.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing is the only secret sauce to begin this entire process, whether it's trust building or building an incredibly awesome culture, it begins with the individual leader and how she or he manages her thoughts, his thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
having like getting a handle on that, right? This
Mm-hmm.
this kind of, it really does uh it seeps into everything that you teach with the framework, actually with both frameworks, with the thought model, with the mental fitness framework as well. All of that, it boils down to an individual self-awareness and how well do I manage my own self, because I can't manage myself poorly and then expect to be a, create a great culture around me. Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
Yeah, because it all starts in your own mind. The drama really is in your mind. So if you have drama in your
That's
mind,
so
it's
sad that
gonna
you're
it's
saying that.
yeah, it is. And it's gonna be drama outside of your mind if you have drama in your mind, right? So if you want to
Right.
increase productivity and you want to increase trust, you're gonna have to get out of your own head and start like testing the waters yourself and being brave and practicing these behavioral principles that are going to make everybody start jumping in and practicing them.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about mindset. What
Mm-hmm.
mindset do you think we need to withstand the current high stress levels that we're going through, the change that's happening so rapidly, the adversity? What kind of mindset do we need for that and still be able to build a freaking awesome, healthy culture?
I think when there's a lot of adversity and a lot of change, that means there's a lot of gray area, right? And
Yeah.
people get really freaked out when it's not black and white, when there's not a clear process or a clear way of working. So they get completely in their panties in a bunch, or they start to spin on
Mhm.
all this drama because it's not clear. And I think people just have to get comfortable with the idea that they're not, it may not always be clear, but you're doing a good enough job. You're doing the best you can. And it's okay if the answer isn't totally there. You're still going to be able to work with others, get through the day. I mean, let's just take it back to parenthood. When you
Mhm.
had your first child, you didn't know what to
Yeah.
do. It was all gray,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So how did you navigate that? Well, you just put one foot in front of the other and you got through
Day
it.
by day.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really like getting comfortable with the unknown,
Mm.
and being okay that you just may not have all the answers, and it doesn't have to be black and white for you to perform your job or to be able to have conversations or try something new. It's okay if it's not clear. And I think today's workplace, the only thing that is constant is change, because
Yeah.
our society is so fast and we evolve second by second. It's just very different than back in the days when it was much more of like the process was like A 9-month process is turned into a 1-month process, and a 1-month process
Mhm.
is going to turn into a 1-week process pretty soon. So there's always going to be this constant noodling change and gray area. And there's always going to be
Mhm.
adversity now because our society is
Mhm.
just evolving so fast. So get
Yeah.
comfortable. Have that
With
mindset that
being
you're,
uncomfortable.
yeah. And but like, I'm going to be good enough no matter what's thrown my way,
Okay.
because you've survived this long with a lot of uncomfortableness. So
Yeah.
you can just keep on navigating it. Like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm good enough. I'm going to
So
survive. That's the mindset.
are you saying that having clarity in my life is important,
Hmm.
but it should not be the foundation from which I like I determine my entire life. Like I need to be able to almost like hold the both extremes of having clarity and yet feeling like I have no clarity. Is that what you're saying? Because
Oh
that's kind
yeah.
of paradoxical.
Yeah, I think you're going to get clear, and then 2 seconds later you're going to be unclear because we've now moved the needle again, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just about it's just about not pinning your happiness on being clear. Like, if you're constantly trying to get to this black and white way of working and think it's going to
Mhm.
stick, it's not going to
Mhm.
happen. So you're never, like, people think, oh, I'll be happy if I can just if it can just be clear. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, don't pin your happiness on just being clear. Pin your happiness on, it's okay that we're just flowing through some gray area right now. Because
Okay.
that's where all the frustration comes in our life, is when things aren't
Yeah.
black and white. But I now
Yeah.
live in a life where I'm just rolling with the day. I'm more malleable to anything that's going to
Yes.
come up because I know I'm going to be okay. It's in my
Almost
head.
like the water. Almost like
Yeah.
it's like water flowing down the stream or something.
Yeah, being more fluid, because just be happy with being fluid versus be
Okay.
happy with being clear and landing the plane, right? Goal, it's like
And
goals. People think, if I
mhm,
achieve that goal, I'm going to be happy.
mhm.
They never are when they get there. So why can't we just be happy in the state or the journey? Like, be happy in a constant state of journey versus landing the plane, being clear, having a goal that you achieve. Because once you hit that goal, you'll want the next one. You'll want the bigger house. You'll want the promotion again. You know what I mean? When you get
I
that
do.
promotion, you'll still won't be happy. You'll want another thing. So I'm
Right.
saying, learn how to be happy in the journey, and that journey maybe have some gray area, and that's okay.
And okay, so I'm hearing that you're encouraging us to redefine where our happiness is rooted, like where it comes from, but also our self-value, because I think happiness and self-value are very closely connected. And that becomes really hard without introducing the idea of self-awareness, because I think for someone who is listening to you for the first time, half of what you said makes sense. Like, oh yeah, okay, I should find a different way of gauging my happiness, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe goals is not the right way. But then I'm left hanging because, like, okay, so if it's not what I've been thinking so far to this point in my life, where is it then? Like, how should I go about this? So can you talk a little bit about self-awareness here, and how you would see one should approach this idea of finding their value or happiness so that they can actually focus on the right thing.
Yeah, and I know we're far from culture right now, but it does play
I
back. I
know.
mean, you as a person plays into every culture, so I guess this level of self-awareness and self-value is important. So people tend to hang their own value on their achievements or their outward perception, people's perception of them, right? If people
Mhm.
think that I'm smart, then I'm valuable. If people think that I am rich, then I'm valuable. If people think that I
Mhm.
know what I'm doing in my job perfectly, then I'm valuable. So we hang a lot of our value on other people's opinions. And I
Mhm.
guess where I would say, become more aware of yourself, to become self-aware of that. Make sure you're grounded in where your value comes from. It can't come from other people's opinions. It can't come from this place of if I have this, then I'll be more valuable to others. If I have a big house or whatever it might be, it has to come from your belief in yourself. Your value is, I am worthy just as I am right now. I'm a human being and I'm worthy as any other human being on this planet. And so you have to feel like you provide value just as you are today and be happy with who you are today. Because if you're chasing, people's opinions about you and you're chasing the next greatest thing to feel like you're more valuable, you'll be on like a sinking ship. It's like this never ending self prophecy of hell because you're never happy because you never feel like you've gained it. But you can be happy right now with who you are. So there's the self-awareness. Really raise your self-awareness about where are you deriving your value. Is it from others' opinions or is it from yourself?
And does activating the gray matter, obviously, it helps with this, right? This is part of why um, you coach as you do with the framework you use.
Yeah, well, gray matter is where you have deductive reasoning and you can make decisions based on reason versus operating with the backside of your brain where we're just operating out of like survival instincts, right? Safety, do things that are easy. So it's true. You need to kind of activate your brain to raise this level of self-awareness. And listen to this. The more your value comes from your own feeling of self-worth, the more you won't be afraid to step into vulnerability and have conversations or make mistakes at work. So when you're really grounded in yourself and you feel worthy no matter what happens, no matter what there's no guarantees to what you're going to say or what you're going to do, but you believe you need to do this to make the company better or make your life better. When you have your own value of yourself, your own self-worth, you will be more comfortable being vulnerable. And that plays out in culture all the time and how the culture functions. You have to feel valuable and have your own back and feel your worth in that company, in that role, in that job is worthy of them having you speak up and bring up ideas that are different than other people's and talking to someone that you may disagree with because you feel worthy enough to hold that space.
What's the first thing you teach individuals when you're working with a company to build a healthy culture?
I teach them to like think about the other person first versus themselves. And what is that person that you're talking to? What is that team that you're talking to going through? And what is their perspective of what they're going through? And realize that most of them are really smart, but they're super sensitive to what's going on. And they're going to try to protect themselves unless you kind of come out and embrace them and be empathetic and curious about them. Like we all operate from this place of protection, protect our egos. So how do we drop the ego? I think that's what I teach first, is learning to drop your personal ego and look at other people and other teams with a curiosity about what's their perspective. How are they interpreting this right now?
Is it always smooth sailing when when you first present this idea?
No, because people don't have the courage to speak to relate to others that way. They don't have the courage because that means they might have to speak up or change their own perspective, right? So I think that it doesn't usually happen naturally. It takes practice.
Yeah, and sometimes it builds some confrontation, some conflict, right? So for a company that is or a team that wants to start implementing a couple of steps, especially the ones that are already sensing there's that dense energy around them, a bit of conflict that's unresolved, what kind of steps would you encourage them to take if they want to start resolving some of those issues?
I think the biggest thing is people want to be heard, and I would just ask questions. That's the first step. I would just start, if you want to be curious and empathetic, just start asking questions and listen. Yeah, curiosity questions. And just listen. Definitely. Listen. Yep.
That's the first step.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I think that's all I have to say about culture right now.
I think you have a lot to say about culture, BJ. But I'm also aware that time is running out. So I hope we can have another conversation where you can dive deeper on how you've been helping companies build their culture, um, how different aspects of how an individual can participate in creating a healthy culture around them, whether it's at work or at home or in their community. But for now, I want to thank you so much for investing this time with us and for sharing your wonderful wisdom as always. It's been such a pleasure. I
Thank you.
expect we're doing this again very soon.